How's it going, folks? Welcome to episode 112 of the Avocado Gamescast, the Avocado's gaming podcast. As we're recording this, both Summer Game Fest and the release of the Nintendo Switch 2 are just 2 short weeks away. But we're going to talk about those on our next episode. For now, we're enjoying the fact that we are fully in our Discord era. We are on Discord with the help of Craig and his evil twin Geark. And I'm here with the Kappa today to talk about how all that's been going.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, I think editing it was so much easier and faster. I think you could see by the turnaround time, but just originally because it uploads it as an Audacity project, which is what I edit with. Just having the ability to do that felt so good. Like not having to. The old way was we would export the MP3, convert it, download it, upload it, convert it to Audacity project, edit it, reconvert it back, then turn it back into an MP3. So this saves me about half those steps.
The other nice thing is we've only done two-person podcasts on this, but when we have more people, um, everyone gets their own channel, as opposed to
Yeah.
what we had before, which was I'm one channel and everyone else is one channel.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it
this
was
is going to
basically a
make,
two channel no matter how many people were on it, which was tough when we had like 5 or 6 people on it and like someone wanted a sound or a noise or something cut out, or I was trying to like, blank someone out because I had to do the whole track that was everybody but Merve basically.
yeah. Well, now we can do like big podcasts. We can have like huge groups.
Yeah.
We can have drop-ins, dropouts. It's going to be a real fun time.
Just need lots of ways to spell Craig different, I guess. Like,
Yeah,
everybody has a Craig.
everyone can have like a Careg or a Grassy
Reag.
React. This is getting some Kingdom Hearts shit right now.
Yeah.
Like, Sigarx is gonna be like recording
See,
it
because
in
he
a
had no heart.
yeah, so he recorded it as a backmask. It's gonna work. Um, yeah. So speaking of things that are evil and heartless, um,
Oh,
our
Randy.
good old friend of the podcast, Randy Pitchford, said some stuff about video game pricing. And we're not just doing this to dunk on Randy Pitchford. We think there's
Yeah.
actually a discussion about video game pricing to be had.
Yeah.
Um, but let me just say what Randy Pitchford tweeted. You know, it's a bad sign because I said tweeted and not skeeted.
Yeah.
Pitchford's
X'd.
still on
Yeah.
X.
Yeah.
Uh, so, a fan tweeted out, Randy, this game better not be $80. Don't take that risk. A lot of gamers aren't going to pay $80 and feed this notion of constant increase on the price tag. You are the CEO. You have some say with the price when it comes to your publisher. And then Pitchford said, A, not my call. B, if you're a real fan, you'll find a way to make it happen. My local game store had Starflight for Sega Genesis for $80 in 1991 when I was just out of high school working minimum wage at an ice cream parlor in Pismo Beach, and I found a way to make it happen.
Yeah. Cool for you.
Uh, he did kind of sort of apologize later and said it wasn't his intent to kind of like demean people who want to pay for the game,
Hmm.
but can't necessarily. So he did kind of sort of backtrack, which is, even Pitchford could turn over a new leaf sometimes.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think recognizing at least that it was a foot and mouth time was pretty good. Now, there's kind of two angles I wanted to talk about this though. One, I kind of get why games are $80. I just do. I mean, I know we've been talking about it for a while, right? But it's like if you don't want a ton of monetization, if you don't want a ton of stuff, games have to make money, right? It is a sad reality, but it is a business. And if you don't want your studio to go broke and you don't think the market's there for it to be a $30, $40 experience, then yes, you have to charge more money. It's just how it is, right? I think where the conversation gets interesting though is Borderlands worth $80? Or is, whatever game you're making or playing, is that worth an $80 price point of entry? I don't know. I mean, like I get know when you get into like the fun per minute or how much you spend per hour of gameplay. I just don't know to me personally that I would buy a Borderlands full price $80 out the gate. I don't know that I would be missing much from what I usually do, which is waiting for the game of the year for some types of games, right? All the DLCs out. I'm not going to go back and replay Borderlands, multiple times. So might as well wait, right? So I think that's the interesting part. I get why games are expensive now. But I think the other thing is that he really said was that whole real fan thing. Um, you got to be careful because I think there are real fans of Borderlands. Don't get me wrong, but I think everybody else is just like, oh, cool Borderlands game at this point. I don't know that there's people, chomping at the bit for more Borderlands. They sure
Um,
work for the movie. I'll say that. So I think that kind of proves my point.
I'm looking at Borderlands 3, and I don't know if there's been a recent controversy on Steam where, by all reviews, it's very positive, but by recent reviews, it's mostly negative.
Yeah.
And I don't know what changed behind the scenes. I'm looking through some of the reviews. No, fuck the EULA. Uh, Game itself was fun, but do not install it until Take Two removes their root spyware from it. Scum, not worth the current EULA. So
Yeah, I think usually when you see that, it's on those like live servicey games like Helldivers or, Destiny or like games where, a recent patch has really fucked things up. And that's what people are kind of reacting to. I think with Total Warhammer 3, they had some like weird price DLC that people thought was too expensive. So usually that's kind of where the airing of grievances happens, right? So I could see that happening with Borderlands 3, especially if people are just, at this point, like, okay, you're still changing the game, still patching things, and I guess they edited the ULA somehow. That's really weird to me. But
yeah,
yeah,
I don't. This seems really boilerplate though. Like
yeah,
cheats and exploits are bannable offenses. Well,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I
Mods
mean,
are a bannable offense. Well, I see why, because it is a multiplayer game.
so it's hard. That's that gray line for me a little bit where there's no versus mode. So if you know what I mean, if I cheat a little bit in Borderlands, who does it hurt? Right? Does it hurt the experience, or does it hurt the people who are trying to sell me XP patches or stuff like that? You know what I mean? Like for example, I cheated in
Borderlands doesn't really do that though. Borderlands isn't a
right.
microtransaction game.
Yeah. I do know they had what they were trying to do was sell those keys though, or give away those keys. Remember, they were like stash keys or something like that. And then like
Oh,
there was
I didn't hear
codes
about
for
that.
them, and then so like I think it was like basically like a loot box kind of thing. I don't know how much that stuck around or if it did still stick around, right? But it was like for a while there was like keys you could get, and there was like so when you open the key you get a certain rarity of gun or something like that. But I don't know, I might be wrong. I just remember that being a thing. Might have been around Borderlands 2 time. But yeah, I mean, as pro cheating as I am, I've kind of always thought like if I'm not hurting anybody and it's single player, leave me alone. If I want to,
Yeah.
if I don't feel like grinding out money, hey man, why do I need to? Dragon's Dogma was a good example for me. Remember, it had all that controversy about like the things they were selling. Man, Cheat Engine gave me that stuff in 30 seconds, so like controversy over for me. But yeah, I think that there's the publishers who patch out cheats in single player games in order to sell things in game. I think that's kind of scummy, to be honest. But I don't know how much of that was Borderlands, but the EULA, I think, those things are really weird. I don't know how enforceable they are. I've kind of always heard they're not, like there's only certain things that they can force because I think like judges have ruled no one reads those things. So, um, but yeah, I mean, whatever. The controversy is going to follow, I think, Borderlands until it's no longer, a game. But I don't. It's hard to say, but I think if you can justify your game being $80, then that price point it's just the new price point. I don't know. I know Nintendo got some backlash, but I bet you people are going to be buying their games at $80, right? So to them, it's worth the price cost. It's just same thing it always is. Does the dollar make sense for you?
Yeah. Like I say I wouldn't spend $80 on a well, for me $110 on a
Yeah,
video game. But like I'm getting Mario Kart World as part of the like discount bundle.
sure, but like
So
you've done
I'm
like the
not paying
cost
the whole
analysis for
price.
you, and you're like, yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense, right? You
And
know,
like the next Donkey Kong is not a $110 game. It's going to be less than that.
right?
But like when the new, I don't know, when Xenoblade 4 rolls around and that's retailing for $110, I'm gonna buy that game.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
like,
I think that what pushed games from being $80 for so long were microtransactions, or they were like special editions, or like release the game 3 hours early, or you know what I mean, 3 days early, or stuff like that. So, a lot of the ways they were getting around just finally charging those price points were kind of annoying and shitty anyway, right? So I don't know. I don't know if this fixes it, and then we start to lose like all those little weird additions and stuff. Just kind of go up back to how things were, getting expansions instead of everything being DLC, stuff like that. I
I'm
like to assume the
honestly,
best, but
yeah, I would say I'm honestly very okay with games costing like $20 more if you want to pay them 3 days early. Like,
yeah,
sure, if you want to be a sucker, subsidize me. I'm
yeah.
happy.
But it's
Um,
that thing like, we hate when studios go out of business because they stop making money, right? So what's the best way to do is for them to make money. So if that equals more expensive games and everybody's done the math and they're like, there's no other way than to just charge more for these things, because making a game is, multi-million dollar years long project. And if you have a flop now, it's worse than ever. I mean, studios are shut down after one. They don't get a second chance sometimes. So yeah, I don't know if it helps people keep jobs and keep making games, sure. But I don't know that. I think for my pocketbook, there's going to be a lot more. Well, do I think this is a Game Pass game? Do I think this is should be a $39 game instead of a $79 game? Like that's the stuff you start to kind of do in your head a little bit more with an $80 price point. 110, man, I don't know. That feels different. That three-figure amount, I don't know, something about that feels weird.
yeah, that's like I was already having those debates about like with HST paying
Hmm.
3 figures. And now that debate is just we've surpassed that debate because the
Yeah,
base price is 3 figures.
yeah.
Um,
So now
I
you
mean, I do
become like,
think.
good.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I think now too, when you start to think about what you do and don't want to buy, you also kind of like start to plan ahead, right? Like I know I'm going to want this game in a couple months, so maybe that's my, $100 purchase this month, rather than just grabbing all these games that come out. And I think that might make timing game launches a little bit more, instead of just avoiding the GTA. Now it might be something like, yeah, we don't want to hit the market at the same time as anything else.
Yeah, you really want to spread out that calendars because people are going to be thinking like, "Hey, X percentage of my paycheck is going towards this video game."
Yeah,
And even if you're
yeah,
pretty good with money and saving up, and you have a reserve fund or what have you, and you have a lot of spending money, it's you still think about it in terms of like, yeah, I made X amount of money this month, and then Y amount of money went to a game.
yeah, a game.
Whereas
And
when
then
it's
what if
below
you don't
like,
like the game?
yeah, I
That.
mean, we're still seeing more like budget price titles. Like one game we're going to talk about a little later is Clair Obscur Expedition 33. That was not a full price game. That I believe is
Mhm.
$50 US, right?
Yep, I think that 4 down, yeah. Much 50,
Yeah,
but yeah, same price. But I'm pretty sure I'm playing it on Game Pass, so
yeah,
um
65 Canadian,
no, that's not bad.
which is yeah, not bad at all.
Yeah.
Um, really want to play it at some point, but I'm just busy with
we'll
other
we'll
games.
talk about.
Yeah.
I guess we can
Um,
launch into it, but yeah.
there is before we launch into that, there is
Yeah.
another thing we did want to talk about,
Oh yeah.
uh, which is what in the world is going on with Bungie?
I know. Poor Bungie, man. I don't know. I've been kind of, now Paul Tassi, he seems to be pretty linked into the infrastructure over there and what's
Yeah.
going on. And I think it maybe helps and hurts that Bungie seems to have two very, you know, two journalists who seem to very much follow their studio, which is Jason Schreier and Paul Tassi, right? And
Yeah.
both of them have been saying a lot of alarming stuff, like the morale's really low. That a bunch of like the studio higher ups were playing Tarkov, and then like it kind of came down like as like a demand. This is our next game, even though people were saying it didn't fit Marathon as a commercial project, right? And then a whole bunch of the art team was following an artist, and they were copying their work for a lot of directly lifted things.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
It's real bad on that.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so Just get a bit of background. The reception to the Marathon Alpha was lukewarm, not like universally negative, but not like
Yeah.
cautiously
When
optimistic at best. Not the kind of reception you would like. And then the art scandal broke.
Yep.
It turns out they were lifting her. It was like literally the assets lifted wholesale, or in some cases, her logo um,
and also the
on the asset
just
itself.
also kind of the vibe. Like the
Yeah.
one thing that I heard people say, well, Marathon's at least got an interesting art style. And this is very much that artist art style. It's very
Oh, yeah.
yeah, future shabby. I don't know what you call it, but it's very distinct. And then this
Like
whole
neon
art style,
cyberpunky.
yeah, this whole art
Yeah.
style was basically lifted wholesale. And now the one thing that people were saying was good about the game is like, well, they didn't even come up with that actually. Um,
Yeah. Oh, the plagiarism was so bad though. It
yeah,
was like there were sequences of random symbols in there that were lifted and placed directly in Marathon.
yeah.
In one case, as a joke, she had put in a loss meme on one of the textures, and that made it into the game.
That's pathetic. They really should have caught that. Um, from being, a Destiny Halo guy for so long now, I think the other thing that is kind of hitting more than anything right now is that this is the kind of stuff that Bungie's been screwing up over and over and over again. But when they launched the alpha, the timing was weird, right? And the alpha had less and less players per day because they kind of didn't add people as the alpha went along. So that's not a good look when your Steam numbers for your much touted alpha for this game are dropping rather than going up, right? Which
Right.
seems to indicate people tried it out and they got bored with it and didn't log back in, right? Um, the other thing that Bungie has tried to kind of cultivate this, like, I wouldn't say astroturf, but it's close to it, right? There's a lot of Destiny streamers that they're just their guys. They're the guys they go to whenever they need, people to calm down about something or feel better about something that maybe they shouldn't, right? Instead of getting mad about. I noticed this time that Bungie kind of steered away from a lot of them for maybe a good reason, because I wonder if a lot of them would have said this game sucks, right? And I don't know that they wanted that. I don't know that they wanted people to hear that about this game. So I feel like they went out and they got a bunch of streamers who were a little bit more outside of the Bungie sphere of influence, but maybe more in the sphere of like Tarkov, right? Those types of guys that
Right.
those streamers who are more pushing for Tarkov than they would be maybe Destiny, right? They're the hardcore streamers who play these extraction shooters nonstop, and that's who I think they were chasing rather
I
than
think
Destiny. You know,
I think there's
good.
also a recognition that um, Destiny and Marathon are going to have very, very different
Yes,
audiences.
which is so dumb. Why, like, why not PVE at all? I mean, okay, but getting past that, right? Um, I think that they saw the streamers, they saw the alphas, and I think they started to panic a little because then what happened next was Arc Raiders had their alpha, and Arc Raiders didn't have to pay streamers to play it. They were playing it organically, and they were loving it, and they were really into it. And it wasn't just like, oh, it's got a cool art style, but I don't like anything else about this game. They were enjoying it, right? Which I think probably thinks that I think that probably had maybe some heads at Bungie, like, okay, well, maybe this isn't what we think it's gonna be. Maybe this isn't the surefire smash we thought we had. But the morale part is really hard to hear because they've already had studio cuts after studio cuts after studio cuts, right? Um, and I don't know where they go next because their big Sony's big reason for acquisition was because they were experts in the live service space, and Sony was about to launch, what was it, 13 live services or something like that
Like, I think it
that
was
they said after
12.
that? It was a lot, right? They're like,
Yeah.
well, we're going to hire Bungie and they're going to be the experts in this. And this is why we're paying them way too much for that studio. And then, nope, they canceled like maybe all those games. At
They
least,
canceled basically all of them except for Helldivers 2, which was let's be real, a bona fide success.
yeah. But also
But
basically out the door by the time they hired Bungie for that,
no,
right?
it was a couple of years after. But like that was not built in house at Sony. That was a hired studio. Like
Right.
Arrowhead is not a Sony studio. But like everything else got canceled, and the one or Concord famously got unreleased. And it looks like both Fair Games and Marathon are now in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, yeah. And a couple like Creative Assembly had a pivot after the Hyenas collapse, but at least they were able to do that kind of on their own. They didn't have a big multinational corporation breathing down their neck saying, "We paid a lot of money for you guys. Figure this out," right? Um,
Well, they had Sega kind of bring down
well,
their name.
but I think Sega actually just let them go back to making what they were good at. I think they reprioritized the studio, right? They
Yeah,
they kept them,
like
yeah,
essentially they're like, you guys go back to making Total War and the next Alien
yeah.
Isolation.
Which is good. I mean, I think that's what you would hope for after big swing and a miss. But and then I think the last like part of this equation was Sony looking at Concord and being like, we can't have this happen again. There is a lot riding on Marathon, I think, and Marathon looks like shit. That's I think it does. I don't see the fun in that game. I really don't. So I don't know what's going to happen, in the future. And it feels like they killed Destiny to shift the whole team to Marathon because I think they felt the pressure. And now Destiny's suffering. I haven't logged in Destiny in a long time. I had a clan of 100 active people. We were all playing, and I don't think any of us have touched Destiny in months, because they just got lazy with it, right? And so now they killed the golden goose, and put it all on Marathon. And I don't see it with Marathon. I really don't. So.
You
I
have
could be
played,
wrong, but
yeah, you have played other extraction shooters. Like you've played The Division.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm kind of curious,
mhm.
like, what about The Division hits for you that
Sure.
you're not
The
seeing in
Division is
Marathon?
mostly a PvE game where
Okay.
if you want to really like roll out and try an extraction shooter, it's almost its own mode. So you can gear and loot and everything in PvE and then jump into, I think it was called the Dark Zone. I'm pretty sure it's Dark Zone. You could jump into
Yeah,
the Dark
I've
Zone,
heard
shoot
that.
it out with other players, and then if you're lucky, extract with Dark Zone specific loot that was usually like a tier better than the PvE stuff, like not amazingly better, but a slight upgrade in a lot of ways. But you could still be very competitive inside of the dark zone with your gear. I also don't think you lost your PvE gear in the dark zone if you did die, only the stuff that you were trying to extract from the dark zone, right? So you weren't really in danger of a full character wipe because you ran into, a team of sweats, right? You just lost what you had on you that may have been an upgrade, right? But
Yeah.
you're not starting at a character wipe. Bungie's got a couple things that I think as an extraction player, I don't know that are like I hate losing everything on me. I think it feels like I've wasted my time. And being older, I don't have that much time to begin with to really develop. Um, I don't like that. I don't like that there's no PvE element to just kind of have a baseline character. I don't like classes also. That seems really odd, like an odd choice for an extraction shooter to have classes. Because there's going to be a clear meta that develops very quickly, and if you're not that class, good luck, right? Um,
Yeah, no one's
I don't
going to
know.
want to team up with you
Yeah,
if you're
exactly. Yeah,
not
oh,
playing the meta.
hey, your class sucks this year. Sorry. And the season reset, I think, would really have me kind of scratching my head. I know I've played some Tarkov, and I know Tarkov does have some resets, but they're few and far between as far as I know. At least when I was playing it, it's not like it's something where you grind all this gear, you get all this stuff, and then it resets. I think there's only 2 maps, which seems kind of bare bones, and I think there's like 4 or 5 of the heroes, which again seems pretty, this seems like a 29.99 game to me. You know, like I don't know that this is gonna save studios worth of stuff. So I don't know. I'm very pessimistic, and it sounds like maybe Sony is as well because they've stopped all advertising for Marathon, at least outside of the US. I don't know about inside of the US. We were talking about that earlier, but it
Yeah, I
sounds like
believe
there's
it's.
definitely.
I mean, there's no official confirmation on this. What I believe the Sacred Symbols podcast heard was that their overseas ad spend had been shut down.
Mhm.
But we can confirm that. Um, what I find really like weird about all this is it's not like there aren't computer players or AI. It's just not a traditional PvE experience
Yeah,
in the
they
sense that
are
you
in the game.
have
Yeah,
they're at like computer controlled enemies running around, but it's
right.
not like they're special enemies or like something you like a group of like monsters you can collaborate with your friends on taking down. It's just like, oh, there's an AI player kind of running around that acts a little differently from like a human player.
Well, so
Uh,
many of the experiences too in extraction shooters are like stuff that happens in the moment. They're very in the moment things, right? Oh man, we didn't
right.
think we were going to get up, but we ran into this team, and then another team showed up, and then us two teams took out this other team. We had like a little, truce, and we walked out of it, and everybody got walked out with it. It's those types of things. But that's fun to someone playing the game. That's maybe fun to a streamer's audience who's watching it. But to everybody else, it's gonna be like, what the hell is this? I can't believe, you wasted all this time and you walked out of there with nothing. It's gonna feel weird to people. And I don't know. I don't know that the average person, I don't think Tarkov has been a runaway smash in a way that it's catering to the mass audience of gamers. I think it's found a very specific group of people who love it. They
Oh
love
yeah,
it. They play it and they learn it, and that they get rewarded for their map knowledge and for, what, where, and what to loot and how to play the game. They get rewarded for that because they play it every single day for hours and hours and hours. But
it's a lucrative niche that is just
Mhm.
completely unknown to people outside of it.
Right, right. And I don't think you want that if you're a $4 billion studio purchase that's been riding high on the success of, a very, very successful back catalog. I don't know if that's something you would wager the future of your studio on. I think that's what I guess I'm getting to is Marathon seems like a fun experiment, but I don't know that Bungie should be experimenting right now. I feel like they need to get back to what made them. If they made a Marathon, but it was a very traditional FPS, I think we wouldn't be having this conversation. We'd both be excited about it. you know?
Yeah, I think like what you're describing is, and what I'll make explicit here is, imagine if this were the multiplayer mode for a game with a meaty single player campaign.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and then you spend your time learning the maps and learning the game in that single player campaign, and then you're dropped into, a multiplayer frenzy. Oh boy, feels new and cool, right? Sure, and that's pretty much what the division does. And I wonder if the division, having done that, made Bungie think we need to do something else. We need to go 100% in on this. And I don't.
Which is
I
so
think
weird
their
because
initial.
now they're just copying
Mhm.
Tarkov.
Right,
Whereas
exactly.
we know the division model also works and it's
Mhm.
closer to what Bungie's good at than going completely PvP. That is
And
not
I
their
think that
specialty.
they're kind of in a weird spot, like maybe advertising or hype. I don't know what you want to call it was, but right, they have to convince the hardcore Tarkov players to drop Tarkov for this game, and then they have to convince the people who never played Tarkov and never would, or the people who played Tarkov and hated it, that they should play this game. And that's a weird spot to be in because the Tarkov players, like I said, they're good because they played the map a zillion times, right? They love Tarkov. They live it, breathe it. They know their loot spots. They know where they camp, all that stuff, right? So you're going to tell them, okay, well, never mind. You're going to come play a new game, and here's why you should play it. But it doesn't have similar art style. It doesn't feel like a mill sim. All this other stuff that they've got going on. And now they have to convince me, you, pretty much everybody else. Oh yeah, actually, you want to play this genre that you've never really gotten into, because here's what we're going to do that's new and cool. And the new and cool stuff seems like it caters more to the people who are going to play it for 150 hours a week than me, who's going to drop in once or twice with some buddies and try to loot some stuff and get out, right? Um,
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how you balance it. I don't know how you fix it. A lot of streamers who did play it were like, these were some of my lowest viewed streams, and people were not feeling the hype, right? Bungie did a art stream a couple days ago, which wow,
Oh
right?
yeah, this
And
is the thing that really seems like it put the nail in the coffin. Where it
yeah,
was supposed to be like a gameplay stream, and then they're
yes,
like, well, we can't actually show any gameplay for reasons that.
yeah, because they're removing the stolen art. That's what it was. And so it looked like they were being held hostage, or like the two, I don't remember who it was. I think they were art directors or something.
The art
They did
director
not.
just like stood there practically in tears,
Yeah,
like
and
as chat roasted him
they
for an
read
hour.
some kind of like prepared statement, and it's, corporate blah blah blah. We unintentionally, a former employee, stuff like that, right? But meanwhile, what is everybody in chat spamming? They were calling it like art raiders. Yeah,
Yeah,
which is
that's
like
that.
which is
That's
funny as
such a
shit.
good name. That is so good.
Twitch chat is sometimes like an eighth grader. Like I can't remember the community said that like they're gonna make fun of you, but they're gonna make fun of you accurately. So like that's kind of what I got from that. But it was a nightmare of a stream. Everything that they were trying to show they couldn't, and it felt like everybody was out for blood. Um, it I don't know that it could have went worse, honestly. And I think after that, I think Paul Tassi put out an article that was like, "This is the end. Like this game has no chance." Once you kind of lose all the community in these types of games, you don't have a hype process now. You have an apology process, which is not where you want your game to be 2 3 months before release, right? You want people to be, oh, I can't wait to see this map. I can't wait to do this. Nope, they're having to explain an art theft scandal, which they shouldn't have to, but that's eating up all the hype for this game, and instead you're left with an entire chat making fun of you and calling you art raiders when you want them to be excited about your new game.
Yeah, I don't really see how they recover from this.
I don't.
Um,
Yeah.
like they're going to have to redo a lot of the art, and what? Look, like how do I put this? You can be inspired
Yeah.
by art, and you can pretty much lift it wholesale without legal repercussions. But when you're literally taking the assets,
Hmm.
you don't really have a leg to stand on. And now it's so obvious where the inspiration came from. That it came from this. It wasn't like a when you take a mood board and you grab a source from here, a source from there, etc. It looks like they were literally just like, we want to replicate the work of this one artist.
Yeah.
And so that is going to be our sole inspiration. We're going to like raid her Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever timeline, go through all her DeviantArt or wherever else she posts her, and just grab all of it, uh, literally take the assets and paste them on objects in the game.
You know what? Like I think
Don't know how you
I
get
kept
back
thinking
from that.
about, why didn't they just hire her? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It was clear that she absolutely knew how to work in the look they were going for already. Why don't you just say, hey, look, we're gonna hire you on. You're gonna do the art design or I don't know what you would call it, but like,
yeah.
hey, but give them, you've got the money. You got $4 billion, right? Why don't you just hire them instead of spending all that money or having to undo this stuff? It's probably twice as expensive now than just you know, I don't know. I feel so
Not to
weird.
mention having the knock-on effect of
Mhm.
ruining confidence in the game to the point that people are now openly cheering for its downfall. This
Yeah.
is Concord all over again. People
Yep.
want this game to fail.
Yeah. Oh boy.
And
Tough
like,
times.
yeah, I mean part of me does want this game to fail, which is
Yeah.
sad because I there are talented people working at Bungie who like clearly know how to make like good mechanics, who clearly have artistic talent, talent in sound design, talent in programming, and that talent is being wasted on a project that no one wants to actually come out.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very much like shades of like Anthem or like, those some of those other games that were like, why did you even make this? This is not what you guys do. This is a weird direction to go in. It's not your strength. It's a bad fit for the studio. It's a bad timing for the game. Nobody's excited for it. Um, I don't know. It feels like they're too far down to cancel it, and so much of the Destiny community is kind of left. I don't know that they can just go right back to Destiny with the same numbers that they've had, or or hope to bring people back. But I don't know. This and like at least Bethesda's doing well. But remember, like a couple years ago, I was talking about like the bees, BioWare, Bethesda, Bungie, Blizzard. Those were all like my favorite studios growing up. Basically, now, I mean, who knows with BioWare? Bethesda, I think, seems to be doing pretty well. They maybe signed a good deal with Microsoft after all. But the rest of them, I don't know. Blizzard, I got bought out, and they haven't really been doing much um, since
Yeah.
Diablo. But I don't know.
Bioware, I don't know. They're in a weird spot, but
Yeah,
like I still haven't finished Veilguard.
yeah.
We'll
Failguard,
talk about
good,
that.
not
We'll talk
great.
about that in a few episodes
Yeah,
from now when I
exactly.
actually finish it. Um, I will say, I mean, I haven't played it in like 2 weeks. My opinion is and like Act One finale,
Mhm.
really, really good, and everything after that has just really soured my opinion
I
on
can
this
see
game.
that. Yeah, it gets a little better from there, but yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. You'll find
But
out.
I've heard like Act Three picks things up again.
Yes,
So
yeah,
maybe I just need to slog through Act Two, um,
basically.
which is
Which you
just
shouldn't have to
really annoying.
slog in a game, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that alone is kind of a little bit, but yeah. Eventually we'll get to that, but we can talk about what we've been playing now.
Oh yeah, for sure. Um, so
I did it.
let's actually talk about things I'm positive on.
Yeah,
Um, I'm going to start by talking about a game that I finished last night called Many Nights a Whisper. Um,
that's a good title.
so, oh yeah, it's a really
It's like
evocative
it's like
title.
a it's like a Midwest emo band song name.
Ah,
Yeah,
incredible. Oh yeah, it does sound like
it's like a
it
Get Up
does
Kids
sound
B
like
side.
oh yeah. I was gonna say a Hawthorne Heights cover band.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
um, so like it's a collaboration between two Spanish studios, Deconstruct Team and Selkie Harbor. Um, Deconstruct Team was the studio behind the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood, which I named one of my favorite games of I think 2023 was when it came out. Um, and this is a game somewhat in that vein, like playing along around with similar thematic ideas, but on a much, much smaller scale. Like Deconstruct Team had an external publisher, Devolver, so a lot more money behind that game. This was a much shorter project. Um, so the premise is that you're playing as a character named the Dreamer, and you're essentially learning how to fire a slingshot under the tutelage of a mentor. The idea is that on the day of a special ceremony, you will have the ability to grant the wishes of people who have come to speak to you by hitting like a torch bowl with with a lit slingshot, kind of like you see sometimes see people like lighting a flame with a flaming arrow, that kind of thing. You only get
Okay.
one shot to do this, though.
Oh,
That's why you're
Jesus
going through
Christ.
all this training. Yeah,
The pressure.
yeah, that is a huge part of the game.
Yeah.
Um, so, like most of the game, you follow your preparation for the ceremony. Um, during the game, you get to hear the townsfolk's wishes, and then you decide whether or not you'll grant them if and when the arrow successfully lights the torch. Um, the townsfolk can't see you.
Huh.
So,
Okay.
like, you're talking on either side of a wall. Um, and what they do, this is going to sound really weird. There's a hole in the wall through which they, like, thread a braid. And if you decide to grant their wish, you chop off the braid. And the next day, you hand off the braid to your mentor, who weaves it into the slingshot to strengthen it so it can shoot farther. And
Huh.
so the gameplay loop is practice with your slingshot during the day, and at night listen to wishes and decide whether or not you're going to grant them. And this all culminates in the finale where you have to make that final shot. I'm not going to describe what happens if you do or don't make that shot. I won't spoil that. But yeah, that's the flow of the game.
Okay. I think that sounds very cool, actually.
Yeah, it's a it's a really interesting it's a really interesting experience. I don't know if it definitely did not hit as hard as the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood, even though it's playing around in a lot of the same thematic space. Um, so the Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood was both about the actual choices you were making, but it was also a game about the concept of being pressured into making choices that could have world-shattering effects. So it was both about the weight of making choices and the actual choices you were making. And same sort of thing here. Like there's this huge weight on you to train to be able to grant the wishes, but
Hmm.
you're also making decisions about each of the wishes and whether or not you want to grant them. Um, and the Cosmic Peel Sisterhood did a really, really good job of marrying those two ideas. Many Nights a Whisper does not do such a great job of that. It really
Mm.
feels like it's about these two things separately, and by making the like the thing that grants the wishes a physical action that you have to kind of train up to perform,
Yeah.
that you do by like aiming your mouse properly and making sure you've charged up the slingshot appropriately. It's really finicky. Um,
So you could be like, "Oh, I
but
I meant to grant that wish, but oops, I missed. Sorry." You know,
yeah,
like
I meant to grant all
oh
those wishes, and now I can't do it. Um, and so it really becomes more about the physical pressure. And I understand they wanted it to be about that pressure, and I understand what they were going for. But it really divorces that from like thinking through whether or not you want to grant people's wishes. And some of them verge on really silly.
so
Some
the
are
other
like,
go ahead.
go ahead. I
The
was
other
gonna
thing I
say,
was gonna say is I was gonna say that like the you get better at granting wishes if you grant more wishes, right? By the braid getting stronger. So is there an incentive there to grant most of the wishes, some of the wishes, all of the wishes?
so okay, let me explain like how it's operationalized. So the way it works is wishes you the more wishes you say you're going to grant, the
Hmm.
more the longer range your slingshot has. But you don't
Okay.
need the full range of the slingshot to reach the final bowl at the end that will grant all the wishes in your one shot at the night of the ceremony. So there is an incentive to grant some
Oh, okay.
wishes.
This makes sense now. I thought it was like somebody comes up, they ask for the wish, you shoot it right then. So it's like
It's
you kind
one
of
shot to grant them all.
oh wow, okay.
Like
Yeah.
that's why there's so much pressure.
Yeah.
Um,
You're saying some of
yeah,
them are silly?
yeah. Some of them are silly, and some of
Mhm.
them are but harmless. Some of them are like actively kind of scary. One of them's like, yeah, I want to get revenge on someone. Don't I know I could wish for them to die, but I want them to die by my hand. So like, let me grant revenge on them. But some are more like tragic. I uh like I'm dying of cancer.
Yeah.
Let me beat the cancer. Some are very like harmless. Oh, this flower's about to go extinct. I'd like to bring it back. That kind of thing.
Okay.
Um, so
And then so
they
you
all,
queue these up and you say, "Yes, I'll grant this wish. No, I won't grant this wish." And then you have the one shot to do
yeah,
all of them. Silly, serious, everything. Wow, okay.
everything all in one go. So it has a bit of that flavor of Papers, Please. But
Mhm.
imagine if at the end of Papers, Please, everyone whom you let through was like put in a holding area, and if you successfully like press the right button or put the right stamp, then all of them would be free to enter the country. And if you failed, then all of them would be executed on the spot.
Wow. Yeah. I the pressure makes so much more sense. That I don't know that yeah, at some point you kind of wonder if that bleeds over and like I'm feeling too stressed to actually deal with this, right? So
Oh,
I know
like
they're
it's
pixels, but damn.
it's perfect. It's perfectly set up to do that. And it does
Mhm.
such a good job of like building up that tension. But it never satisfies. Like I'll say the ending is not very satisfying, regardless of whether you succeed or not. The
I
ending
don't
is
think it
not very
could be,
satisfying.
right? Like if you're a wish granter and people become accustomed to having their wishes granted, it's like kind of like what is that thing like in Mad Max where he's like don't drink too much water you get addicted to it like if what if you're every year you get this person who grants your wishes maybe it makes you not live such a good life or something right like
So
if
do you know how the game addresses that?
how
One, it only happens, I believe, every 10 years. And second, the way that your mentor explains it to you, it's when the wishes get granted, it will be as if that had always been reality, and people will not have awareness of the wish having been granted.
oh well yeah but then you don't learn about your mistakes too so like
Yeah.
if your wish was like I wish that I wouldn't have divorced my wife then you just get her back well maybe you're still an asshole and that's your wife left
Oh,
you because you were an
that's
asshole.
exactly part of it, right?
Oh
You
okay.
live with the consequences of people not understanding the gravity of what they might have wished for.
Hmm.
Um, but I do think the endings, I should say, are a little bit like There's a difference between leaving something open to interpretation and just not saying anything at all. And I
Yeah,
think it tends a little too much towards not really saying anything at all. And it really needed a little more to tie together um, the like ethics of the choices you make with the pressure of having to make those choices.
it's a shame
The
because that's
Cosmic
such a
Sisterhood does this so
yeah,
beautifully. This game less so. Sorry,
that's
what were you
a
saying?
hell of a premise. I mean, kind of reminds me a little bit of The Giver, a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit.
a little bit.
But
Yeah.
that sounds fucking awesome. The concept was something that I wish they could have done more with if it doesn't really nail it, but maybe somebody,
Oh
figures
yeah.
that out because there's a little bit of that in Claire Obscur. I will say, a little bit of that, some of what you were talking about, but um, yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah.
a very
And
cool world.
just before we make that segue,
Mhm. Oh, okay.
I'll just conclude on saying soundtrack of this game fucking rules.
Yeah.
If you love the sound, like the kind of electronic space rock, kind of proggy soundtrack that the Cosmic Sisterhood had, you'll find that here as well. And even though it sounds like I'm lukewarm on this, it's only an hour, so if you're interested, give it a
I mean,
shot.
the
I think
concept
it's still
alone
very
makes it
good.
sound like a must play. Yeah, I agree. I think that sounds really cool.
But speaking of making difficult choices, you've been
Yeah.
playing the Clair Obscur Expedition
Yeah.
33, right?
Difficult names too, because I always want to call it like Claire Expedition or like Obscure
Clair
33.
Expedition. Clair Obscur Expedition 33.
Yeah.
It's
um,
très très français.
exactly. Yeah, whatever. Um, you can go ahead and pencil this in for my game of the year. I mean, there's no doubt from what I've played that this game this is to me an actual 10 out of 10, not what Baldur's Gate 3 I think was for a lot of people where it was a 10 out of 10, but I don't think they actually played Act 3, right? That I've said that for a while, right? A lot of those 10 out of 10
So really
people,
a
I think
6.7 out of 10.
yeah, I think they I know they've patched and fixed it a lot, but a lot of those out the gate 10 out of 10s for me from Baldur's Gate 3 were like, okay, you clearly fucked around in Act 1 for a long time, which you definitely can do in that game, right? But you did not get to that Act 3 because that thing was a mess. But now Clair Obscur might miss the landing, and I really doubt it will because I kind of see where it's
I've
going. I'm far enough that I
I've
see where
heard
it's
both.
going.
I've
Yeah.
heard some people say it doesn't stick to landing. I've heard
Mhm.
other people say the ending is absolutely beautiful.
And so the thing for me more with Baldur's Gate was less about the actual story tying it together because it definitely did that, but also like the mechanics in the world started to really fall apart. And I started to experience a lot of bugs and a lot of like actual like problems with the gameplay in Act 3. It just wasn't as polished, right?
Right.
Which I think a lot of that got fixed through patches, of course, but that was my impression when I played it. But um, the first thing I want to kind of get out there, I feel like I'm fighting a battle with this, and I don't think I'm going to convert anybody because I just don't think they're going to believe me. But calling this a turn-based strategy game is kind of disingenuous. It's not really what it is. The best analogy I can actually think of is you remember Mario RPG?
Oh yeah, I've been. It's straight up a Paper Mario game.
Yeah, yeah. So it's exactly like that to me, where like you're never just sitting there during the turns like you would be in like a Final Fantasy, right? You're parrying, blocking, dodging, those sorts of things. Do you parry this as a group or parry this solo? And so you're making those kind of decisions. Even when you're attacking, there's not huge but minor quick time events, right? So it doesn't feel like you're just sitting there waiting for turns as much. Depending, I think, on what difficulty you play, I think I'm on medium, so the parry timer is pretty tight, but not super unforgiving, right? It does play a little bit more like a Souls game to me, except I'm not having to worry about the movement, right? I'm having to watch and telegraph the attacks for is this a block or is this a dodge or is this a group block? Those sorts of things, right? But I'm not having to worry about running around in a pit full of lava or something like that. So it takes that element maybe and simplifies it a little bit, but awesome story. I don't think anybody's going to get past that first 30-minute intro and be anything but blown away. It is incredible. Voice acting amazing, story, combat, everything. I think it's all there, right? So like I said, if it doesn't stick the landing, I'm still happy with how it mechanically held together. There was an ability that I was kind of using that I thought like I happened upon something. They were like, nope, this thing's broken. You can enjoy it for one more week and then we're turning it off. Um, but even like the way like your characters have little abilities that they can use in combat that are almost like bonus abilities. Everything feels so cool. I don't feel like any party member is wasted, which is one thing I really like with RPGs where there's not a clear. I cannot remember which Final Fantasy it was, but it was one with Saz and Vanille and Lightning. I can't remember which
Final
one.
Fantasy 13.
Yeah, there you go. So like in that one, I feel like there was a very clear this is the party that you would need. And if you weren't running them, then you were at a disadvantage. This game, I've never felt that. All in all, like I said, I think it's my game of the year. Even like the getting there has been so good. I cannot imagine that I'm going to be as bummed about the ending as I was with Baldur's Gate 3 when I did my very first playthrough was Dark Urge, which I felt like was the canon playthrough, I guess.
Right.
But I did it murdering everyone. And yes, I know a lot of people were saying, "Oh, well, you got a bad ending." Well, no, I don't. I didn't really get a bad ending. I got an incomplete ending, which they kind of went back in and patched. But you know, I thought all in all, this game really put some stuff together that I don't know other games have done since. And I wish I could just get people to kind of get past that turn base because I feel like that's holding a lot of people back from this really, really, really good game. Is they don't like the turn based or they think the turn based is old style Final Fantasy when it's really got a lot more going on.
Oh yeah, like I said, it's more like a Mario RPG or
Hmm.
Paper Mario than it is like a Final Fantasy from what I've seen. And there's nothing that says you can't take those mechanics and put them in something very, very aesthetically different, which
Right.
it seems like they did here. Um, what I'm really curious about, well, I'm curious about two things. Um, One is the art style, and one is the story.
Sure.
Um, the reason I'm really curious about the art style is I've heard various things about it, from the fact that it feels very like hodgepodgey to
Hmm.
others saying that it is actually this very well considered, coherent
Okay. I'm
art
going to give you
direction.
like a really cheap cheat answer. Okay. I think it's hodgepodgey by design. I really do.
Okay. I've
So
also heard that.
yeah, I think it's supposed to look like a fractured, incoherent memory, like the memory of a dream that you had when you had the flu, right? If you tried to put that into a landscape, that to me is the art style, right? It's incoherent but coherent at the same time. So very like um, the this is going to be a weird game because I don't think many people remember it for the art style. But do you remember the Dante's Inferno EA game? It was kind of
I
like a
rem
hack and slasher.
Yeah, so funny thing about Dante's Inferno is, do you know that like Wordle clone Guess the Game
Yeah.
online? Whenever I see something that's kind of like vaguely fantasy that might be kind of hellish that I don't recognize at all, that's my go-to guess. And
Yeah.
every single time it's wrong. It's never Dante's Inferno. Just
Oh,
like
so
how
then
it's
you
never
know the art
Lucas on
style.
House.
Well, maybe you don't know the art style, but maybe you do.
I
But
don't.
that's what I kind of took away from kind of like an ethereal something's not right here. It feels like I know this, but I don't. There's a street light and a building, but it's all wrong. There's a cut up statue, and where the head should be is, a train engine. But like it all sort of starts to come together when you just accept that you're in a twisted world that doesn't necessarily need to make sense. So that's why I kind of said like hodgepodge by design. I definitely walked away feeling that the art style they're going through was more dreamlike than realistic.
Okay.
Once you're onto the island, which no spoilers, but it's called Expedition. You better believe you're going to that island. Um, so once you get onto the island, you start to kind of see how things are so wrong, and they do a lot of effective stuff with dead bodies. There I might be getting a little bit spoiled, but there's been expeditions that have gone before you, and you kind of get to see what happened to the other 32 expeditions in really weird and twisted ways. But I don't know that I would if I was gonna knock really anything, I don't think it would be the art style for me. I think the one drawback I've been having, at least, is it doesn't do a good job of explaining some of the pros and cons of some of the combat abilities. It really leaves you to learn them on your own, and it kind of throws a lot at you all at once. Where there's some practice fights early on, and kind of in the tutorial, but you're only doing it with the one character, and then I don't really figure out two or three of my characters until way down the line. So I thought that was kind of a more on them with the tutorializing of it. But um, I have a feeling that as I played with them, a lot more of their stuff made sense. But it's not. It's enough of a different combat system where I think they could have done a little bit more hand holding, and maybe they do on easier levels. But I definitely felt like I was learning a lot of stuff as I was going, and I was like, "Oh, that ability does that. I should have been using that for a long time." Um, but all in all, beautiful game, gorgeous music is amazing. Voice acting out of this world. Jennifer English, I guess, is the go-to if you want a 10 out of 10 RPG experience. Um, really, really
Yeah, they
well
got
done.
Ben Starr, Andy Serkis, Charlie
Yeah.
Cox. And
No,
it's not just like they're getting Hollywood talent; they're getting
yeah.
Hollywood talent that's good at voice acting.
And the thing about Charlie Cox too is it's like they get a Hollywood voice acting experience out of him, which is amazing. Like he really is in that role. It does Andy Serkis. I think he's always a good voice actor. I think that's been kind of, I don't know if that's controversial, but I think I've never had a problem with his voice acting.
Oh, he's
Um,
an excellent voice actor.
yeah, I
Um,
don't know why I've just heard like some people like in some circles be like, oh yeah, it's him again, like as a negative, but maybe I just
he's
am in the
so good at
wrong.
transforming his voice. I don't know
Yeah, I
why
think so
people
too.
would say
Yeah.
that. Like I know sometimes there is this resentment of getting Hollywood types. I'm
Mhm.
fine with taking people out of Hollywood as long as they're good voice actors. Sometimes they
Yeah.
cast Hollywood talent and they just are really bad in the voice booth, but these are people who are good in the voice booth. And so if you're able to get them, sure, go get them.
Yeah, and he's fantastic. I mean, you do not feel like you're getting like, Hollywood actor phoning it in at all.
Oh
He
yeah,
he
this
shines
is
in it.
not Matthew Perry as
Yeah,
in Fallout New Vegas.
or Peter Dinklage as the ghost in Early Destiny. Though I think that
Well,
one,
it did come from him.
I think they did kind of do a little bit of a, yeah, that was on us, not him thing with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Like how they were
Um,
doing the line read, I guess, was what they were going for. But anyway, so yeah, Clair Obscur. I have a feeling this one. I know on the avocado. I just haven't seen a lot of people talking about it. I feel like this is up the alley of so many people there, but it's just kind of under the radar for some reason in our
a
little
lot of people in my
world.
circles are like my non-avocado circles are talking about it.
Yeah,
One of my colleagues at work was telling me he was going to go play some Clair Obscur, and I was like, "Dang, it's made it into normie world now."
yeah.
So
One thing I've noticed with a lot of streamers who are playing it are they're like, "Hey, I want to play this off stream because like I'm enjoying it too much. I don't want it to be like people spoiling it or people, telling me, "Oh, do this," or there's a hidden treasure chest over there or stuff like that. Like they want to experience it, so they're actually playing it off stream because that way they're not having it ruined by their chat. That's kind of telling. I think that's kind of interesting.
yeah, I'm really eager to finally try it when I have some time.
You're gonna love
Um,
it, I think.
I think it's going to be my big summer RPG that I'll
You
like. I
know,
want to finish one of Metaphor or Veilguard first before I hop on Clair Obscur. But once I finish one of them, it's my
Yeah.
next big
One
RPG.
last thing on this, and I think this is something maybe you can relate to, but the way I play this game is like I almost play it when I know like I'm gonna have like 5 interrupted hours to really like keep going at it because with this game I want to keep going because of the story and it like sucks it's like watching a really good TV show where it's like okay, next episode, right? You want to keep like
Oh, you want to
so
keep like binging it on
yeah,
Netflix?
exactly. Like I can't play this game for like 10 minutes and then tear myself away at a really cool plot point because I know I'm going to want to see how it's resolved. So I think that's a really good sign, but it's why I'm playing this a little bit slower. I'm kind of like savoring it on one hand, but on the other hand, it's like, I really want to like play this in long spurts. So I feel like I'm getting somewhere and not just like, okay, 10 minutes, I'll do this area. So it's taking me a little longer to play, but I think that's actually a good thing, not a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that it's hitting for you. And I'm really eager to try it. Um, Now we're gonna enter the shooter segment of what we've been
Oh,
playing. Because I've been playing Back for Blood
yeah.
with my co-op group. So we picked this up for like I think $5 Canadian.
Oh, yeah, and I think they were selling the 4-pack at some point too, right?
They might have been. We each picked up our own copy. But yeah, they were selling it for super cheap a few months ago. So we all picked it up. Then we didn't play it for a few months because we were playing other things. And then we're like, you know what? We spent money on Back for Blood. We should take advantage of that. So yeah, we've been going through the campaign together. And I'm going to say something that is going to be very controversial for a lot of listeners.
Uh-oh.
I think at a basic mechanical and level design and gameplay design kind of level, this is a far superior game to Left 4 Dead.
Yeah, actually, I would agree. I think you're right
Um,
on. You know,
I
I think this.
think. Sorry, go ahead.
I think you're right in that it feels more like it doesn't feel as like cheap to me as Left 4 Dead felt. I know Left 4 Dead was loved for like its game director, but like a lot of how I felt with Helldivers is how I felt Left 4 Dead, where I was like, this is stupid. How can we possibly win in this scenario, right? It doesn't. Now, Back for Blood, I feel like they allowed for that a little bit more.
Right. Um, what I am going to say though is yes, this is a better game to play once you're in the game. This game is stunk by having the most horrendous, badly explained UI
Yeah,
of any game I've ever played. Like,
I know what
and
you
I'm
mean.
not exaggerating. It has one of the worst explained UIs, one of the most confusing gameplay setups. Like, to actually get into a match of Back for Blood takes it takes 10 minutes to figure out every single time we load it up.
Hmm.
We have
Yeah,
no
and
idea whether we're going to be loading into someone's save, whether our progress is saved, whether we don't understand what the card system is. We have no idea
oh,
what
the
it
deck
means.
manager. Oh my God,
What is the
I
deck
forgot that you
manager?
said that.
I have
Yeah.
no idea.
Oh, it's so no,
Um,
it is the card thing. I know exactly what you're talking about. That thing is a nightmare.
we have
And
no idea what's going on with any of this. We
yeah,
have it's all set up as far as I can tell, or okay, it's set up in a way that looks like it's trying to pump you full of microtransactions. But as far as I can tell, it isn't set up to sell you lots of
yeah,
microtransactions.
and some of them are
So,
just literally the menu to get into the game, right? Like it's
like,
like,
I
yeah,
don't know who thought any of this was a good idea. So, like, there is a good game here that's buried under the worst user experience imaginable.
yeah. I'm looking at the UI now, and I'm remembering there's solo decks, there's campaign decks, and there's swarm decks, right?
What
There's
are
three different.
those? I don't know the difference. I don't even really know what a deck is.
Yeah, and it's the other thing I think they didn't think about this, and this is something that I wish some of these co-op game players would think about, is if I always play this with my same crew, right? There's basically someone who's usually the host, right? And their game setup is, looking kind of different than mine because they have access to all these stages I don't, and this and that and stuff. I wish they would allow for a online save. It's like, hey, this is where your group is at. This is where you're at, right? And like, which save do you want to continue from? Because if I remember this one right, it just gives them all to you, and you just have to figure out, oh well, Bill, you always host, so you host this one because if we don't, we're gonna go end up on mine, and mine is 2 levels back.
Yeah, I think that's how ours is set up, but I think my friend hosted previously and I hosted subsequent ones and the save transferred. I'm not entirely sure
Yeah.
because, again, nothing is explained.
A
But
weird game in so many ways. The
it
gameplay
just,
is great though.
yeah, like a fundamental, again, blasphemous thing to say. The guns in Left 4 Dead feel terrible to shoot. These
Hmm.
feel like appropriately weighty, fun to aim and point and shoot. Um, Mechanically, aside from it restricts your movement a lot in the same ways that Left 4 Dead does, and
Yeah.
it feels a little bit less fun here because there's a little bit less abstraction. So you're like, why am I being impeded? There's nothing actually grabbing me. Whereas in Left 4 Dead, because lower fi, you don't need to visually see yourself being grabbed to understand why you're being slowed down. Um, but like in terms of the way they've designed these levels and how like expansive they can be, how they have little nooks and crannies and alternate paths, how sometimes they kind of double back over on each other. All of that is so well set up. And it's unfortunately in the service of, I think, a gameplay flow that is, or how to put this, like a game flow that just doesn't work all that well. Same similar problems to Left 4 Dead.
Yeah.
Um, like the pacing is not fantastic. Sometimes it feels like levels go drag on a little too long, and can get a little repetitive. But like at a moment to moment, like strategizing with friends, shooting, communicating with each other, setting up like bombs and traps, setting things on fire. All of that is a lot of fun. Um, I just wish they kind of broken free a little bit more of the mold of Left 4 Dead and hadn't just improved its mechanics and graphics.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And it's a tough it's a tough mantle to go for because that Left 4 Dead was very beloved, and I think Left 4 Dead in a weird way was one of the earlier that I can think of like meme games. You know, pills here, all that kind of stuff, right?
oh yeah, yeah.
And I think a lot of people thought because they remembered the jokey meme moments from that game, like the sprays that people could do on the walls and stuff. I think they forgot, and actually, I didn't really like playing that game moment to moment. I liked, kind of the cultural discussion about it. I think,
Oh yeah. That game, honestly, you play through the campaign, boring as hell. The
yeah,
fun thing
terrible.
about that game is playing through mod campaigns.
Hmm.
Like I've done one that's like Disneyland. I've done ones that are essentially remakes of Resident Evil.
Yeah, the ones that were
Uh,
like 50 tanks on a map, and they could give you like a machine gun. There's a lot out there. It,
oh yeah, there's one that's like a Final Fantasy VII like like demake almost. It's very
oh,
fun.
really?
Yeah.
But yeah,
They do
I don't.
all sorts of
But
fun ones. I was gonna say they do all sorts of fun ones. There's even one that's like a Lego knockoff. It's very funny. But yeah,
for
go
a
ahead. Sorry.
while, it felt like that genre was like on the verge of taking over too, with that and Evolve and a couple of, like, I think they were calling like asymmetric shooters or something, asymmetric survival shooters or something like that. And
That's
then
a that's a really unfortunate acronym.
yeah, yeah, I don't know what I don't remember what they're calling, but the idea was, hey, you know, two teams against each other, but they're not, both shooting at each other with guns. But I think there's been so many like bad examples in that genre that it's kind of died out. But um,
Like
I don't
Evolve.
know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because like the Evil Dead game was doing something kind of similar that kind of ended up being a flop. I think there was like I want to say that Friday the 13th, or yeah, I think there was a Friday the 13th one. Dead by Daylight's kind of stuck around, right? Um,
Yeah.
I think there was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre game that was kind of doing the same thing, but a lot of those games just never really kind of found their footing. Um, I think maybe the only survivors really being Dead by Daylight and Left 4 Dead.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. Like there is a lot of cool stuff you can do in this gameplay space. Um Back for Blood is an example of something cool you can do in this gameplay space. I just wish it were a little more unique and
Hmm.
had a usable UI.
Yeah,
Um, but
which is
hey, as
very
as
fair to
far as
ask
like,
for.
sorry,
Which is very fair to ask for. I mean, it's basics, you know.
yeah. Um, but as far as like a fun thing to do with your friends, you could do a lot worse than Back for Blood.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think I don't consider this a recommendation. The UI is just that bad. Um, but for our listeners, if you're looking for a four-player co-op game, it's not a bad time.
What
Um,
an endorsement.
yeah, what an endorsement. I do want to get more positive about stuff.
Yeah,
I'm just looking through the rest of the agenda. I'm like, wait, no, the rest of this is criticism.
yeah.
Um, but
Well,
like,
so is mine, so that's kind of funny.
oh, you're gonna speaking of,
Yeah.
are you gonna criticize Doom: The Dark
Oh
Ages?
yeah. I don't enjoy it. I
Oh,
feel
is Merv being vindicated for being skeptical last year?
uh yeah, absolutely. It's
Okay,
bad.
I'm not gonna gloat
Um
too much. So what's up with Doom: The Dark Ages?
it okay, so we've been kind of iterating on Doom now for a while, I think, right? Like, what is Doom? What is the experience of Doom? Stuff like that, right? Um, things like that. And I think that we kind of left Doom Eternal in a good, not great place, right? Where people were mostly enjoying it. Um, but not necessarily loving it. They wanted some of the stuff back from the first one. And I think Dark Ages went way too hard the other way with it, where I am not enjoying the combat. I find it frustrating more than fun. I don't like the ammo, the constant weapon swapping. And that's one thing I thought a lot of people agreed on with Eternal. I thought people thought that was kind of stupid to actually, be, chain swapping weapons. Relying on the finishers, I think, takes you out of the moment to moment shooting. And a lot of reliance on kind of like gimmicks like grappling hooks and stuff like that felt very shallow. And then this game kind of doubles down on it. Um, I feel like I'm constantly using my shield when I don't want to because I'm playing a Doom game. I want to be shooting things in the face. I feel like they have this is going to sound really weird. So they have a melee system, but you have ammo for your melee. And the
What?
game actually kind of yeah, I know, I know. So like you have like a power glove, and I think there's like a mace. And I haven't
Okay,
gotten
okay. I
far enough
suppose
in the
it's
game
not
for the
that
other one.
ridiculous. It's
It,
like
it
the
feels
energy
weird.
sword in Halo having
So I'm
ammo.
I'm
Okay.
constantly and it kind of benefits you to save up your melee combos to kill bigger things because like each consecutive hit does more and more damage. But overall, it just feels. I know Doom just got rebooted. It's crazy. It feels stale. I just didn't enjoy my time with it like at all. I got pretty far, I think. It's hard to tell sometimes with some of those things, but going back to kind of just an overly dark, grim, medieval setting didn't really do much for me. Doom and Doom Eternal had some nice outdoor open areas, and this is just kind of, I don't know. They're doing this weird mix of sci-fi and medieval, and it's I don't know. I thought I would like it maybe more for lots of reasons, but it feels very flat to me. I feel like I'm just running around doing almost like puzzles, killing puzzles. I don't know what you would call it, but kind of walking away from it, just feeling like, man, I don't know that I like New Doom anymore. So I haven't really seen reviews on it, to be honest. I don't know what it's looking like. I wouldn't be surprised if it was kind of in that 6 to 7 rather than that 7 to 8, if that makes sense. But man, I don't know. Overall, I'm kind of more bummed with it than I thought I would be. And I thought this one would be like a cool, quick, jumping around break. But nah, I wasn't feeling it.
Did pretty well in reviews. It's an 85 on Open Critic.
Mm,
Um, but there are several it has received quite a bit of criticism for various things.
yeah,
Um, like there are ones kind of at the lower end that
yeah.
are like um
Like I like to me, this feels like if the Doom reboot was a 9 out of 10, right? Um, you know, this one to me would be like a 7 out of 10. Like if we're grading on the curve of other Doom games, I think, if we're just saying as as a shooter, it's probably it's better than average. That's where I'm going to go with that 7. But I feel like compared to where Doom was going, this is a step back. I didn't enjoy the setting as much as I thought I would. I didn't. The gunplay feels awful. And just like switching back and forth to the shield and melee, it feels more like a gimmick than like something that comes innate with it. Doom shouldn't have parries. You know what I mean? Like, do you agree with me? Does that sound like something you would agree with as a statement? I shouldn't be parrying in Doom.
no, like pairing is just not a shooter thing in general.
Yeah,
Like, okay, there's some shooters where like Halo doesn't exactly have a parry system, but I could see parries working in Halo. Like, oh, I put up my Like you use your repulsor, right? Sometimes on an
Yeah,
enemy that gets too close for you. Um, it works in a game with that kind of pacing.
yeah.
With Doom, I'm the Doom guy. I should just be blasting fools, right?
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I wonder if maybe that this is like almost like a generational thing. Like for us, where it's like, no, Doom is me running around shooting shit in the face and it exploding everywhere, right? And it's maximum carnage and blood and guts everywhere, which this definitely does have, right? But I think where I feel like it doesn't fulfill the Doom fantasy or what have you is that I shouldn't be pairing to get ammo. Like, are you kidding me? Like I shouldn't be like, oh, I'm constantly waiting for charges on my glove to punch things harder. Um, it's just a lot of weird decisions. I think that maybe if you're more into Doom than not, they bother you a little bit more than people who have only played the new Dooms, I guess.
Yeah, I think again, I've only the only Doom I've played is like literally the first Doom. Um,
Okay.
so like before mouse and keyboard Doom is what I've played.
There you go. Yeah.
Uh, and like I think it's fine for it to be a game where you're just running around shooting things. Um, and the cerebral aspect comes in from like planning your way through combat encounters on the fly, right?
Yes,
It doesn't
exactly.
come from like slowing the fuck down and like trying to not exactly strategize but like solve a puzzle in slow motion. It's all about making snap decisions about how to manage combat encounters where like 50 demons are on your ass, and yes, you have the world's most powerful shotgun, but you're also facing 50 demons. That's what I think about when I think about
Yeah,
Doom.
I would agree. I think you facing the forces of hell as someone who just blitzes through them feels more like Doom to me than like I'm gonna hide behind a shield or I'm gonna block this or block that. Really frustrating. But I don't know. I guess I've got to accept this is where Doom is going. But I don't think even if you're comparing it to other Dooms, this one feels as fun.
Yeah, disappointing.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
mean,
what I wanted that game to be.
I'll finish it up
One day I'll
eventually,
get
but
around to the new Doom trilogy,
yeah,
and I'll I'll form my opinion on this. But this is not what I want out of a first person shooter. I'm much more into the more like mobility shooter kind of game
yeah,
kind of world
yeah,
these
me
days.
too.
So yeah. Um.
All right,
So
let's
that
keep it rolling with the
is,
negatives.
oh yeah. Um. So I've been playing Metaphor ReFantazio. We
Uh
say
huh.
keep rolling with the negatives. I'm actually still enjoying this game quite a bit, but I'm starting to see the cracks, especially
Uh
some
huh.
of the cracks that Drinking with Skeletons mentioned on our Game of the Year podcast a few months ago.
Hmm.
So I played through another big chunk of it. I'm more than halfway through now, and pacing is starting to become an issue. Um,
Okay.
Previously,
It,
the game was. Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like that's a knock for most JRPGs, but I could see this one because this is such an long epic going for that feeling. This might be even worse in this game.
Yes and no, in the sense that when you have a longer game, it's easier to run into pacing problems, but
Hmm.
there are also longer JRPGs. Like, I've never had a pacing problem with a Xenoblade game. I've had other problems with Xenoblade games, but it's never been their pacing. And those, like, Xenoblade 3 took me over 200 hours, and I never thought the pace of that game was poor. Um, this game, the problem is it's falling into the same trap as Persona that it's so deftly avoided previously, where you spend way too much time between combat encounters and dungeon crawling. So there's these really long VN sections,
Hmm.
and like visual novels, great. I read quite a few visual novels. I am like a visual novel guy in some ways. Um, but I don't come to this game for playing a visual novel for 5 hours and then dungeon crawling for another five. I play this game because I like juggling those two things and going back and forth between them. And that's what this game was doing so well initially. But once you get through kind of to the midway point, that
Hmm.
pacing starts to revert back to kind of like old bad persona habits. um, where it really is okay. You're gonna just go through 10 hours of story and talking to your teammates, and then you're gonna go crawl a dungeon for 5 hours.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah, that's always tough because especially when the game doesn't have a story beat to get to, and it's kind of that middle area where it's like, okay, well, you got to go power up so you can face whatever, boss or challenges ahead of you, but you're not getting that story beat, but you're kind of dungeon crawling for a little bit. It always feels like that's kind of like you're saying, like a pacing issue that just doesn't get fixed in most games.
yeah, and like technically you can do whatever you want on the calendar, right? Like you can go grind if you so desire. Um, the problem is at a certain point, um, like the optional dungeons available to you are just too low level for you to gain any advantage by grinding.
Oh, that's
So
yeah.
like you
They
can't
don't
even get
scale.
ahead of the game curve, right? You just have to wait until the next big dungeon until you can kind of grind on that set of enemies. So really, you're just going through plot. You have no choice. It's not a bad plot. I think it's a decently well written game. It's just like it's just not well paced enough, and I know the game can do better because it was doing better up until now.
Uh-huh.
Um,
That's actually really interesting because a lot of RPGs don't. I think they write them like a play or a movie, like hey, here's our three acts, right? But unlike a play or a movie, especially a JRPG, when you're playing it, you've got to get me to the act in a way where I don't feel annoyed that getting to this act made sense or was worthwhile or I enjoyed getting there, right? If it's just,
right.
like for a while, MMOs were getting this knock of being theme park MMOs, right? Go here, do this, do these fetch quests. Now you're ready to go to this next area, right? And I don't think that's that bad of a game design, honestly. I kind of enjoy that, right? Whereas I think a lot of JRPGs instead they went with the opposite, which is, hey, there's a wide open world, go do what you want, and then when you get back on task, we'll let you know. But also at the same time, you're not really moving the story, so you're not really developing any character stuff. It's just kind of going, I guess. Um, but I don't know if this game has that problem, but I felt that in a lot of other ones. What is that? I can't remember that game, Crystalia or something like that.
Tales.
Chris Tales, I think was what it was called.
Yeah, that was a South American game that was
Yeah.
very inspired by classic JRPGs.
And I enjoyed it, but then I started to kind of feel that same thing, like, oh, I don't know where we're going with this, right? Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's stuff that you're still hung up on this one, I think, because I would love for you to go play or Clair Obscuro and see kind of how that game fixes a lot of those issues. Because I think it's kind of interesting.
I'm hearing that a lot, that it fixes a lot of the pacing problems you get
Yep.
with some JRPGs that just do not know how to pace.
Hmm.
Um, like one of the games I'm most excited for this year, Digimon Story Time Stranger, sequel to Cyber Sleuth. Cyber Sleuth is like infamous for me in the sense that very famously, I thought the first 20 hours were just kind of boring. And then at the 20-hour mark, that game flips a switch and becomes freaking incredible.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
and this is in a 60-hour game. So like there's a third of it that's just exactly what you described. Like you're kind of just going through the motions, you're not developing much character, you're just kind of doing missions here and there, until the switch flips, and then the last two-thirds of the game is like plot, 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 and these
Hmm.
really cool dungeons and really interesting stuff is happening. Um, but it takes so long for you to get there that you kind of start to wonder whether the journey was worth it. Metaphor almost like flips that around, where it starts really strong in how it's paced and it's really doling out a lot of interesting world building and character development, and then it kind of forgets to do that, and you
Okay.
end up in the weird squishy middle part of the game where not all that much is happening. um,
Which kind of reminds me of some of my knocks on Baldur's Gate, which I think this game was kind of you know compared with or talked in the same circles with, where getting to that end of a game is tough sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like in Metaphor's case, it kept it up for like 50 hours, which is pretty good
Yeah.
to like for a game to just be good for 50 hours is an accomplishment. But the past like 15 or so hours of the game have really kind of made me question how much I was loving it originally.
Hmm.
Um, I'm still enjoying it on the
Yeah.
whole. Like I'm not ready to say, okay, this game got bad. That's not what I mean when I'm making these criticisms. I'm just a little bit concerned with the pacing. The other thing I'm concerned about, and it's exactly the same complaint Skeletons raised a few podcasts ago. Um, MP management becomes a huge issue later in the game. Like
Oof.
initially, it's pretty easy to kind of like break the game to give you more MP. Essentially, the way it works is you can kill enemies with real time melee if you're 3 levels or more above them. And if you have a wizard or mage class equipped, that gains you MP every time you do that. But at a certain point, leveling up is so slow that you don't really outlevel early dungeon enemies anymore, and you
Oh,
can't deal with it
yeah.
effectively. So, like, yes, you can kind of go back to the start of the dungeon and wail on enemies, but there are also higher level enemies running around near the start of the dungeon, and it just becomes this really tedious dance of avoiding those enemies while trying to knock the lower level ones. It's just not as fun as it was in the early going, where you're like, okay, I'm just going to go back down and turn this into a hack and slash game for an hour to grind, and then I'm going to go back up to the top of the dungeon. Now it's more like, okay, I guess I'm playing a kind of action puzzle game in real time
I
as I figure
really,
out which
yeah.
enemies are low level enough. Um, just not
That
as
is
fun.
such a weird it's a weird thing to do. I mean, that kind of feels like you're trying to solve a fixed problem. You know what I mean? Like almost every game I think does some form of scaling so that you're not having to kind of like trek backwards all the time, you know? Very odd.
Yeah, like I understand why it is set up that way because the heart of the game is the turn-based combat system, and you want people to be doing that system.
Yeah.
I get it. Um, it's just like by adding this extra MP hack into the game, for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it a
Hmm.
hack. Um, they've kind of incentivized twisting your flow through a dungeon to service that hack. And you can do that in a fun way if they were really like cognizant of how people are going to exploit it. But it seems like they didn't intend for people to exploit it. But they've also made the game pretty hard, so you kind of need to
Yeah,
exploit it.
kind of trying to like serve two ends on that one. But
Yeah.
I've heard, I've heard mostly good things about this game, but sometimes it's hard to tell like how far a person has gone with the game when they're telling you how much they do or don't like it. That's like why I always try to say like, I haven't finished Doom, but I don't like it, or I haven't finished like because there's a lot of games I drop, to be honest with you. I don't finish every game I start anymore. But it goes the same when people tell you, "Oh, I love this game." Well, did they get to that same part you had, or did they tell you that before you got there, or stuff like that? Because I hadn't heard anything about that dungeon thing, but that would drive me crazy. There's certain things in games I know I don't do well with, and that honestly would drive me crazy.
Yeah, I see that. I'll say I don't think a lot of people have echoed my opinion on this, which is fair. And like I'm still enjoying what this game is putting down. I just wish they'd rearranged it a little bit so I could really appreciate it instead of like seeing very visibly how it could be better.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
I there's certain things in games that bother me, and backtracking is um one of the things that I just hate because I feel like it's lazy and I feel like it's doing it to pad, you know?
yeah. Um,
And I don't like feeling like my experience is, being padded when it doesn't have a lot. Okay, just get me to where you want me to be besides having to do all this? It's one of the reasons why um, I liked what was that game? Bravely Default, right? And people hated
Oh,
that
right.
boss
Yeah.
rush mode, but I loved it because it was like, well, I don't feel like grinding. I'm just gonna turn grinding off, or I do feel like grinding. I'm just gonna do it basically. So
Yeah,
that I
it
thought that
really
was kind of
lets
cool.
you tailor your experience to what you want.
Right.
Um, well, anyway, that's Metaphor, a game that I've just reached like a new act of Metaphor, so I'm very interested to see what it feels like now that I'm in a new locale.
hmm
Um, so I think it stands a good chance of me feeling positively about it again. We'll have to wait and see. You've been playing one more game, right? You've been playing
Oh
Civ
yeah.
7?
I hate this game, man. I really
Oh
hate. I
no!
hate. I like. I would give this game a 0 if I was like a professional reviewer. I hate this game. I
Why
am
are you still
so
playing it?
disappointed in what they've done with Civ. Well, I mean, because like with Civ especially, you don't know if like you're one age away from it all starting to click, right? But I've given it so many chances and it still refuses to click. It's like the game is like fighting against me. And even when I enjoy something, it does something that makes me actually turn around and go hate it again. They have really butchered what I think makes Civ an experience that people enjoy, right? Um, so I got to be careful because obviously, I don't want to get into like the like DEI area of complaining about a game, right? But
Oh yeah.
okay, I'm trying to stay away from this, but it's hard for me to explain this without it like sounding a little bit chuddish. But um, so they kind of removed they well, I guess they decoupled, right? Like civilizations and the leaders of that civilization so that you're
Oh,
not so you can play Ben Franklin as leader of the Khmer Empire, right? Which
how
I
would that
think they thought
work?
maybe would be kind of cooler than it is, but the way it plays out is like you just end up kind of like civs don't feel unique, leaders don't feel unique, and instead what you kind of end up with is this like whichever leader I put the most points into is who I end up playing, right? And I think they wanted it to be like, oh, this leader fits your play style, and that's why you play them. But it doesn't really do that because, like, if I play as like I can't remember the Japanese leader's name in this game, but she's like a shaman. So if you want to go like religious with the Japanese civilization, there's a reason to do that basically. But if you don't, you kind of end up with like a leader and a civ that don't match. So every age you have to repick, right, what civilization you are. So you might start off as the Egyptians, and then you might pivot to Mexico, and then you might spend the last part of the game playing as America. And that is weird to me. I don't know why they did that. It I think I think they thought it would feel cool and unique, but instead it just feels so disjointed. And when an age ends, you basically start a new game from that era. All your armies are brought back to wherever they were. Everybody kind of starts back on the same footing. All the technology is basically reset to that level. Um, you get to build more cities, which I think is the main perk, but the game artificially limits you from building cities anyway. So, like in the first part of the game, you can only build, I think it's like um, six or so. Like cities, and then like you have to research stuff that lets you build more cities. Meanwhile, the AI does whatever the fuck they want, right? Of course. Um, and the AI will build cities in between your cities while you're waiting for your ability to unlock more cities. And that puts you into a position where it's like, well, fuck you, Ben Franklin. We're going to war. you know, um, the diplomacy is a mess. They made diplomacy kind of like a resource that you can spend. So, you have 800 Diplo points, and now you can make them build a wonder with you or something like that, which I don't get. I don't think that was a system that was ever broken with diplomacy in Civ. It would be hard to figure out what certain civilizations wanted, right? But generally speaking, like with enough experience, with enough practice, with enough holding areas and talking to civils and stuff like that, you kind of figure it out. Where in this one, it's just, well, how many Diplo points did I stick into, making, you know, Ada Lovelace happy with me? which is a weird position to be in, right? Um, I don't know. I don't know. This is to me like a classic case of fixing so many things that weren't broke. That I just really question what went on where they thought that they needed to reboot this entire series so hard. Where it, I mean, six had a little bit of a rough launch, but it was pretty well liked by the end of its run. And I mean, this sounds silly because I know, yes, games are designed to make money, but Civ always kind of felt a little bit like a labor of love. Like, it was, you
Right.
have Sean Bean as a narrator and you kind of get a little goofy with some of the stuff. And the Civs are a unique feeling. And, Gandhi fights you with nukes and stuff like that. Right. But like, all in all, like it felt like there was a lot of attention being paid. This one, it feels like the opposite. It feels like instead they went with is like, everything feels generic to the point of boring, right? So, okay, well, I'm going to pick, you know, this leader. It doesn't matter really because this leader and this civ don't even go together, but I'm going to switch civs anyway mid tier. So I really am only playing this leader so that I can unlock on my next playthrough Mexico as a starting civ or something like that, right? Because you unlock civs based on how you do and advance leaders in certain traits. So if you want to play as Mexico, you can't off the bat. You've got to like advance I like the equivalent of like the Aztecs far enough so that on your next playthrough you've unlocked them. And it just doesn't make sense. They did a lot of this stuff with ages that I don't really understand why they did it. I think the answer might be, in Civ there was like certain civilizations that were good early game, that some that were late game, and I guess maybe if you're playing like multiplayer, like, I don't want to be the guy who only has an early game civ and now I'm getting my ass stomped. But I don't know that I would rebalance civ around multiplayer. I don't know how big of a world civ multiplayer is, you know? It just seems a very odd choice to make. Um all in
I
all,
think multiplayer is pretty big, but it's like I think the single player is probably the bigger draw.
yeah, I would assume so. But hitting that hard restart every age feels awful. Like, it's just like, okay, I'm kicking the shit out of Napoleon. Oh, well, New Age just hits. Okay, now all my army units are back on my continent. They were three continents away, you know? Um, it's
So
just,
I guess it's kind of just like the state of the world at the end of one age influences the state of the world at the next, but there's no continuity in terms of your progress. Is that
right, a
the
little bit.
idea?
Like, you keep your cities and stuff, of course, right? And you keep your progress, but everybody's kind of bumped up to like a common level basically.
Okay.
So if you've been like stomping people, through religion, and then all of a sudden that era ends, okay, well now everybody's kind of like put back on the same
Oh,
footing.
yeah, everyone's invented like Christianity 2.0 in the interim, and now
Exactly.
you're just
Yeah.
like, okay, that's very silly. Like,
Yeah, I
I
agree.
can understand a little bit of rubber banding, but you want the rubber banding to be like, let's say you were waffle stomping them on religion. Like, maybe in the interim, they come back with like scientific progress that rivals yours or
Sure.
that outstrips yours, and then that way it feels like the you had an influence on the world, and as a response to you like kicking their religion's ass, they now like kick your ass at science. Like I can see something like that,
Yeah.
but what you're
Now,
describing, it seems like they just rubber banded each dimension individually without
and the
regard
other thing
for
is, like,
yeah.
about that is this was kind of a problem I thought they actually handled pretty well in Civ 6, which was, you would have like dark ages and then like ages of enlightenment, basically, right? And like, let's say you got your ass beat in science on that last age. Well, this you're going to start in a dark age, but if you're able to kind of like catch back up, the next era you might be in a golden age because you've kind of caught back up to everybody. Now you're getting bonuses to your science, right? So it kind of rewards you instead of like punishing you, because it punishes you a little bit with the dark age, but then it gives you the opportunity to catch back up in a way where if you do it and you're smart about your development, not only do you catch up, you end up sometimes ahead. Where seven, I do not. I wonder what the reviews look like for this game. I bet you a lot of these are like higher than average reviews, just because I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's Civ, of course it's good, But the stuff they did to this game is just it's terrible. I don't know why you uncouple leaders and civilizations. It just feels weird. I don't know why you kind of insist, I guess, on these ages. I know the ages were a thing in God. What's the name of that game? Is it Humanity or Humankind? I think two games came out that were like Humanity and Humankind. One was like an RTS. One was like a puzzle game. Um,
Humanity was a puzzle game. Humankind
yeah, there
was
you
the
go.
4X game.
So they did a lot in that one with ages. They were very age focused, I guess. And then this, I feel like this is the response to that, which not great, not a great response, but um I know people like the idea of stuff like ages and catch up and stuff like that. Catching up, I should say, not catch up. Um, but ugh, man, I felt so weird playing this game, and I've given a lot of shots. I can't really get past whatever the third era is. I guess into like Steam era. I've heard the game caps at like basically World War II era, which I think is kind of weird. Like usually, you go into like giant robots and stuff with Civ, right? But yeesh,
I, I don't know why you
not
play
a
Civ if you couldn't eventually get to giant robots.
yeah. It's the whole
That
point,
seems like
right?
such a
Yeah,
like the whole point is seeing you go from before where we are to after where we are, right?
yeah.
That's so
Very
weird.
weird, very weird. So many decisions in that game I just do not get. But it's all added up to be absolutely the worst Civ I've ever played. Now, a lot of Civs are bad at launch and then they slowly fix them and stuff. But I feel like this one's got so many things at so many levels are just fundamentally broken unless they just let you turn off. Like a lot of the new changes, I don't think people are gonna like come back around on it.
Yeah, it could go the way of Beyond Earth, which people never came back around on,
Yeah. And
which would be a shame.
if I don't have any insight, but you know what Civ 7 kind of feels like is that they they had some cool ideas and they were like it was maybe going to be like a Civ 6 DLC that kind of like switches up stuff big time, like how some of the Civ 6 other ones did, right? Um
Or like a
but
spin-off, something
yeah,
like that.
exactly. But then I think that they were like, well, we've got so many new ideas, we can't just do this an expansion. It's going to have to be its own game. That's where you get this from. But interestingly, I know there's a lot of movies like this, and I honestly don't know if Civ 7 was review bombed for like evil reasons, right? But it's sitting at 79% on Metacritic for critics, 3.8 for users. That's
I'm,
a gigantic gap, isn't it?
I'm looking on Steam right now. All reviews mixed, recent reviews mostly negative.
Yeah. That's odd. I mean, I don't know if it's just like Civ games are review proof, or like, but there's a lot of like Guardian gave it 100, Destructoid a 90. Like, what game were they playing, right? Like, I don't know. Um,
Um, uh, I mean, I don't really trust the Guardian for video games, and
yeah,
Destructoid has unfortunately been turned. Like Destructoid laid off a lot of their staff.
yeah,
It's now like a gamers group content mill.
yeah.
Um,
I just,
so
I know you can't trust journalists, but I just thought that gap between the two scores was wild. At least as far as with games where um I don't think that
no,
that there was like a woke controversy. There could have been. I don't know.
I
There probably
don't
is.
think there was, as far as I can tell. Like I think it was. I don't think it was review bombed. I think it was just genuinely people don't like this version of Civ.
Yeah.
Um, it reviewed very well, and then anytime I heard anyone talking about it on a podcast or in a Discord, no one had anything nice to say about it. Some people thought the idea was intriguing, like the idea of going through three different ages of three different civilizations, but thought the execution was a really poor like version of it.
Okay. That's
So
kind of my takeaway. Like you did some stuff, but man, and even like little things that felt fixed, like why? Okay, this is something I've always thought about Civ. Like, okay, I get that your cities have like lines that they can basically reach or whatever. But I've always felt like there should be the idea of like a country, right? Like this area is Spain, right? And you can't just go having the AI drop cities in the middle of it. And then they do it, and then it's like, okay, well now I've got to deal with somebody's city in the middle of like my area that I was trying to expand to, but I can't expand because like in the other games you could basically city bomb like an area, just keep building cities until it becomes all linked together, right? In this one you can't because you're limited by the number of cities you can build, right? Which creates this giant problem. The AI being like, yeah, hey, there's your capital. I'm going to put a city 4 feet away from it. Like I don't know why they allow that. But
I mean, it's how the world worked in like 1438. It's
mhm,
not really how the
yeah,
world works now.
yeah. The eras, I think, is something that's. I think they're going to look at it and just not really be sure why they did it. Other than there were other games that were trying this, and this was something that they wanted to play in this ages, eras, whatever thing, and this is what you ended up with.
Yeah, so it's a real shame. Like for such a storied franchise to like try to experiment a bit and just fall flat on each one of those experiments. Yeah, you really do want to reward innovation, but at the same time, if the innovation is stupid,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
people aren't going to show up for that.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's the problem. Maybe they fix it with DLCs like they have in the past, but I think exactly like you're saying, if you're just innovating to innovate or disrupt or whatever, it doesn't always work in your favor. And I really think this one should have been caught out of the gate and not released like this because I played every Civ and lots of them have been broken out launch, but this one just feels absolutely like the worst version of Civ that you could put out the door.
you'd think that if they had sold it with like disrupting the 4X paradigm, they could have like they could have made it something really good. Um,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, I don't think that, weirdly, I think the Civ community, generally older people, they've played a bunch of Civs, they know what they're getting. I don't think they want disruption, you know? I think you could just be fine making, iterations on Civ forever and people would keep buying it. Civ had a lot of stuff out the gate. 6 had a little stuff out the gate that people didn't like, but they slowly kind of brought it back in line. And 7, I can't even auto explore with my scouts, and there's no workers. Doesn't that feel wrong that there's no workers
I
in a
don't know.
Civ
I've never
game?
played a Civ game,
Okay, well,
so
so like your workers, generally speaking, are like they go around and they like irrigate land and stuff like that, right? So that you have irrigated land, which lets you build farms and crops and stuff like that. This one they kind of like were like, yeah, never mind. We're not going to have workers. You just build it from the city, and where you place districts turn into um, you know, like I don't even know what you would call it. Like where you place the district is what turns into um like the developed version of that land is based on the district that you place,
okay,
which I do not
okay.
like. So
It doesn't seem like a ridiculous setup, but it seems like it takes humans out of the equation almost.
yeah, yeah. I mean, because now when you're building a city, you're not making as many choices of what you're doing with it. I guess is the
Okay,
thing.
I see. Like, what I'll ask is, if they wanted to experiment, why didn't they use the Beyond Earth model, where they experiment in the spin-off, and if the experiments are successful, they can port some of that into the
Yeah.
next mainline game?
That's a really
Um,
good idea, honestly. Or I mean, even like I said, if this was a DLC and they tested some of this stuff and it did or didn't hit, I feel like you could have course corrected. But so like like when you're doing like a scientific experiment, you change one or two things. You don't change everything all at once because then now you
right.
don't know what people what ended up being the thing that was changed. I think that's kind of what happened with this Civ is that they changed so much at once. I don't even know now that they're going to have a good idea of what was or wasn't kind of a hit with this one. It just all
Yeah.
feels like crap right now.
Because they know that the overall effect is crap, but maybe there's
Right.
some good ideas in there, and now they'll never know, and they'll be tempted to abandon all those potentially good ideas
Right.
because they have
Exactly.
so many bad ideas bringing it down, or ideas that might be good but work badly with the other good ideas. So overall, you none of the good ideas have a good effect.
Yeah, and that's a weird spot to be in for the seventh iteration of a well-loved franchise, right? Like, you should have a lot of this stuff figured out right now. I don't know that we needed to do gigantic steps, and in one way or another. But yeah, here we are.
Um, Speaking of very weird ideas, are you fine with me completely spoiling the end of Urban Myth Dissolution Center?
Yes, I am, 'cause I've never even heard of it. So
Okay.
I probably
Um,
won't be playing it.
so for our listeners, if you don't want any spoilers for Urban Myth Dissolution Center, the game I talked about on the previous episode, just skip to the timestamp for the conclusion of this episode. Um, I have to talk about this because it's the most batshit ending I have ever seen in a video game. Um, so just to recap, the premise of Urban Myth Dissolution Center is that you play as a young university student who has a kind of latent ability to see um, echoes of things that were done in the past, and then you kind of get conscripted by this organization called the Urban Myth Dissolution Center to go solve supernatural crimes.
Hmm.
Um, and as you go through the game, you discover that all these crimes are kind of linked. And the ending is about how these crimes are linked. Um, so the idea is that all the people, like all the culprits involved in all these crimes, the five previous cases that you've solved over the course of this game, are all linked by the, like, I guess, for lack of a better term, lynching of some guy's brother many, many, many
Sheesh.
years ago. Um, and that's fine for a twist. Like for a game that's as heavy as this,
Yeah,
that's
it's pretty
dealing
heavy. I was
with
gonna say.
like that's kind of dealing with some pretty dark material, particularly and like around like bullying and the effects of social media in Japan. Like it's cool to deal with that, um, but um, what you discover is that the person who's like been behind pulling you towards all these cases, who's kind of been pulling the strings, um, is effectively running this cult, uh, this terrorist cult called, I think, Samazima or Samajima. And you're now trying to go after the guy who's been running all of this, the
Hmm.
guy's been puppeting the strings.
That sounds kind of cool, but
Oh, yeah, sounds kind of cool. Here's the stupid part. Um, you find out. By the way, I should explain. I should explain the main character is a woman. That's going to be important later. Um, you find out that this guy is your boss at the Urban Myth Dissolution Center. All along, your boss has been pulling the strings. So your boss has been like getting you to go after these people, um, despite the
like
fact that going
silence them
after
or
them
yeah.
would like would also point the finger back at him, which makes no sense. Like, why would you be
Yeah.
why would you be
Why
setting up these investigations in a way that would point everything back to you?
it's
Why
like one of those
wouldn't
like
you?
serial killer shows where it's like he wants to get caught.
Yeah, almost. Um, but that's not even the craziest part. This is the part that just like the previous part was just the part that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Uh-huh.
This is the craziest part. Um, you discover at the very end you don't actually exist.
Oh my god, no.
and
You can't you
you're
you can't Fight Club me. This is year 2025.
and not only do you not exist, like you've been interacting with other people, but it's not like you've been like it's a fight club thing where you don't actually exist. Other people thought you existed.
What?
Um yeah, and you're like this collective delusion that your boss was projecting, and your boss was actually you. And
And
because your
you
boss
to
is you, you're actually still a girl, and it's that your boss was a girl all along.
oh my god. This
And
this
the
is something
twist
that
is
you get a
that
little too
they never
clever.
said like that the guy who was killed the guy who was killed was a brother, but they never said that the sibling who was getting revenge was the victim's brother. It turns out you're the victim's sister.
I don't know, man. It seems like you're trying to do a little too much, you know?
I like
You
when that
could
ending
uh,
happened, I was just like laughing in disbelief because it's the most unhinged ending I've ever seen in a
like,
video game.
one of the things I've always heard about, like, M. Night Shyamalan sometimes is, like, it feels like he writes the ending first, and then the rest of the movie is just to get to the ending. You know what I mean? I kinda feel like
This is
that's what.
straight up M Night. Yeah.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I feel like. This game's take a very long way to get to a very weird ending.
Um, and it's a shame because you know what? Pretty good game on the whole. Just like really bonkers, bizarre ending. I cannot believe
That's
that I played this.
You're trying to do a lot with that.
Yeah. Um, Again, like really striking art style, really sharp, insightful writing
So
about
let me ask you
social
this: as
media.
generally a indie game player, I mean, not always, but generally, you play a lot of indie games, right? I think that's fair to say,
Yeah.
right? Do you feel like we're kind of at an age where every game has amazing art and it's up to the story now to deliver a little bit more? Like in a world like where Greece and like your Trines and some of those other games, it's just like, wow, this did this thing really well. Is it harder now for an indie game to nail it past just having a great art style?
I mean, I still think the vast majority of indie games have not so great art.
Yeah, but I'm seeing
But
less and
it's
less pixel, you know?
like okay, what I'll say is there are so many more indie games like with good art just by virtue of it like the market being saturated. I think the actual percentage of games with good art has actually gone down.
Oh,
But
really?
there are just so more many indie games out there these days that the number of games that have striking art has gone up in absolute terms, even though it's gone down in relative terms. Um, and so I think there's something to what you're saying because like there's a limited number of games that people can pay attention to, and so it seems that we're getting more and more games with like these really striking art styles. I'm thinking of like Phoenix Springs last year. I don't know if you remember that point and click
Mm-mm.
adventure, um, or like even Blueprints this year has this like really striking kind of cartoonish art style. Like you're seeing a lot of this cool stuff in the indie space. It just like um, every game kind of has to have a kind of striking art style to kind of stand out,
Yeah, I
whether
guess
that be
that's what I
wholly
was getting
original
at.
or stolen from Anti-Real on Twitter.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, you're just a
yeah,
poor indie studio like Bungie, right? Yeah. No, I guess that's what I was kind of getting at. Like every time I watch like a summer game show or something, I'm just kind of like, wow, so many indie games right now are just amazing looking. And then I didn't know if that is making it harder in that space to kind of stand out now because of that. But it sounds kind of like yes and no. Like when every game's got amazing graphics, or not every game has amazing graphics. A lot of what you end up doing is, kind of the the people that are playing your game are looking for a little bit more.
right. By the way, listeners, if it sounds like I was rudely talking over Kappa, that's because I accidentally turned my headphones off and couldn't hear him.
That's funny.
So I apologize for that. Um, but yeah, I see. There's definitely something to what you're saying, and like, yeah, they need something else. I think, like I mentioned earlier, Urban Myth Dissolution Center has some really good writing, especially when it comes to like accurately depicting social media in the modern age.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, it just like has a few too many twists at the end and does not know how to like did not
Yeah,
show the proper restraint it needed to.
it's very hard to pull that kind of stuff off where you're doing like multiple levels of actually this is what happened. So
Yeah,
unless the writing supports it, it can be rough.
it does not in this case, unfortunately. Um, But yeah, that is Urban Myth Dissolution Center. Um, if you're interested, you can play it. I think now that I've kind of spoiled the ending for you, I don't know if um, anyone might want to play it. But I did warn you to skip to the conclusion if you were interested in playing it. So, um, are there any other games you want to talk about, or shall we
No,
call
I
this
mean,
episode to
I've
a
kind of been
close?
rotating. I think I said when we were setting this up, I said I feel like this is like an embarrassing time of just so many good games. I've jumped into a little bit of Oblivion. I don't feel like there's much I need to talk about there, but really enjoying my time getting back into that game world. Looks gorgeous. I don't quite understand the tech going on there, like some kind of like mix of like Unreal on top of the creation engine on top of it just it feels really weird right now that they're able to kind of put all that off. But looks great, really fun to play. Yeah, so Oblivion, I've been jumping into that. Space Marine 2 got a nice little update. I've been
Oh,
playing with my
nice.
kids. They love that game. So, it's weird because we've kind of bounced around on a lot of different whatchamacallits, like co-op games like your Helldivers and your Space Marines and stuff like that. Whereas like Destiny was kind of the original one for us. Um I didn't know that I would enjoy it as much as I am, I guess. um but I really am liking my time right now with Space Marine 2.
Oh yeah, that I think has been like a game with surprising longevity. I still hear people talking fondly about that game, which is not what I would have expected. I thought that was going to be not even a flash in the pan, just a game that a few people played and that got a few plaudits at the end of the year from the sickos, but otherwise disappeared from the public consciousness. And no, it has had staying power,
Yeah,
which I
I
did not
agree,
expect.
and like in a good way. Like it stays in that conversation where a lot of people who have been playing it kind of stick with it, and check it back out every now and then for like the updates and stuff, which feels good. I mean, it's good to see that kind of game because it I think it was in danger a little bit for being overshadowed, by your um a lot of your other co-op games around that same time. But
Right.
yeah, so far so good.
Yeah. Um, I haven't really been playing anything else myself. I'm definitely going to play Despelote in the next week or so because I've heard that game is incredible and it is very much within like Merve bullshit, as we like to say around here. It's a first-person narrative adventure about a very specific cultural experience. That is an extremely Merve game, as much as like single player first person shooter campaigns or RPGs or puzzle games are also Merv games. Um, Indie narrative bullshit is also Murph bullshit. So definitely happy. Like I'm really, really looking forward to it. Like it was a coin toss between whether I was going to play Dispelote or Many Nights of Whisper yesterday, and I settled on Many Nights of Whisper for the podcast because I haven't heard any podcast talk about that game yet, so I want to provide something unique for our listeners. But I will definitely be playing Dispelote later. And then Switch 2 comes out. I guess I'm going to be on Mario Kart duty for a while. Um, like everyone's going to
That's always
be.
a
I don't
good
know if I'll
time.
have,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know if I'll have much to say about it. I think next episode is going to be pretty SGF focused, but I'll sneak in a little bit of discussion of what the new Mario Kart is like. All right, I think that's everything we wanted to talk about. If you'd like to keep up to date with the podcast, you can follow us on our website at avocadogamescast.wordpress.com. On that website, we post each episode along with a link dump that fact checks all our blathering. You can also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or Spotify. All you have to do is search for Avocado Gamescast. We'll be right there. I am at some point going to correct the broken audio on Spotify and YouTube Music. Um, Needed me, and I might fix it faster because I just need to find time to do it. Um, that's right. I should just make a Blue Sky account for the
Yeah.
podcast. Right now, I just like skeet on my personal account, merv2.bsky.social every time. there's an episode, but I could set up a blue sky for this. Maybe by the time this episode comes out, I will have set up a blue sky for it. Most likely I'll forget, but that's okay. Also, make sure you check out
Hey,
the community that spawned
you're
this
juggling a lot.
podcast. Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, I say you're juggling a lot. It's okay.
I am juggling. Uh, I am juggling a little bit. Kappa and I will talk about this offline about what I'm juggling in my life. Make sure you check out the Avocado at the-avocado.org. It's the community that spawned this podcast. We don't just talk about video games. We talk about movies, music, history, politics, food, and a lot of Heathcliff memes. Heathcliff, the original orange cat. Suck it, Jim Davis. Um, that's all for now. Take care, listeners. We will see you next time.